And then you're managing that with also putting in the work that you need to feel prepared for the games. And yeah, I mean, I have like a lot of people here who...
The rain battered the fogged windows of Murphy's Diner in downtown Des Moines with a relentless rhythm, a kind of melancholy percussion that matched the exhaustion etched across Sarah Martinez's face as she wiped down the same table for the third time that night. Her hands trembled, not from the chill that seeped through the cracked door, but from the eviction notice folded neatly in her apron pocket, a silent weight pressing against her ribs, reminding her of the home she might soon lose. She didn't know it yet, but within 24 hours, one quiet act of compassion toward a stranger with tired eyes and rain-soaked sneakers would strip her of what little she had left, yet grant her something she never imagined possible. Sarah had been working double shifts at Murphy's Diner for 3 months straight, ever since her husband Miguel had been diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. The medical bills piled up like fallen autumn leaves outside the diner, fragile and endless. And though Sarah was only 34, the fluorescent lights above made her appear years older, a woman worn thin by survival. Her manager, Frank Morrison, was a man of rigid order and bitter habit, known for counting every ketchup packet and timing every break with military precision. His scowl had become a fixture, deepening each time Sarah's kindness threatened to interrupt his clockwork control. It was nearly closing time when the bell above the door jingled weakly, announcing a young woman dripping from the storm, her blonde hair plastered to her head, her hoodie clinging to her shoulders. Sarah noticed immediately how her eyes darted across the diner, the way she hunched her body as though trying to disappear into the corner booth she slid into. "Just coffee, please," the girl murmured, her voice soft yet strained, like someone who had forgotten how to rest. Sarah poured the coffee and brought it over, noticing how the girl's trembling hands clasped the mug as if the warmth might hold her together. "Rough night?" Sarah asked gently, ignoring the voice of Frank in her mind warning her to stay professional. The girl looked up, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah saw in those weary eyes a reflection of her own, the look of someone who had been carrying the world for far too long. "You could say that," the young woman replied with a faint, hollow smile. Sarah didn't realize she was sitting across from Caitlin Clark, the basketball prodigy who had electrified arenas and inspired millions. Yet tonight, Caitlin wasn't the golden girl of sports. She was just a young woman lost in the rain, escaping the noise of fame and the silence of loneliness. After another devastating loss, the pressure had finally cracked through her polished composure. "I know this might sound crazy," Caitlin said quietly, eyes fixed on the steam rising from her mug. "But do you ever feel like you're drowning, even when everyone thinks your life is perfect?" Sarah's hand brushed unconsciously against the folded eviction notice, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to be honest. "Every single day," she whispered, sitting down across from her without even thinking of the consequences. For the next hour, the two women talked not about basketball or money, but about life, about fear, loss, and the crushing weight of pretending to be strong. Sarah spoke of Miguel, of how he smiled through the pain so she wouldn't cry, of how every paycheck felt like a lifeline that slipped through her fingers too quickly. Caitlin listened, her posture softening, her heart opening in the quiet intimacy of understanding. "You know what I see when I look at you?" Caitlin said at last. "Someone who keeps showing up even when the world keeps knocking her down. That's not weakness, that's courage." But before Sarah could respond, a harsh voice shattered the fragile peace. "Martinez!" Frank Morrison's voice cracked through the diner like lightning. He marched out from the kitchen, his face flushed with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing? This isn't a charity. You're here to work, not have a heart-to-heart." Sarah stood quickly, the warmth draining from her face. "I'm sorry, Frank. I was just what? Wasting time? Giving away free coffee?" he snapped, his voice growing louder as a few late-night patrons turned to watch. Caitlin started to rise, but Sarah gently touched her arm, whispering, "It's all right." But it wasn't. Frank's tirade continued, cruel and unrelenting. "You think because your husband's sick, you get special treatment? You think I'm running a soup kitchen here?" His words sliced through the air like knives. Sarah's eyes burned, but she held the tears back, swallowing her pride because she needed this job more than she needed her dignity. "Please, Frank," she said softly. "I need this. Miguel's treatment. You should have thought of that before you decided to play counselor." Frank spat. "You're fired. Pack your things and get out." The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Sarah stood frozen, the sound of the rain outside filling the silence left by her shattered composure. She turned slowly, her apron feeling heavier than ever, and began walking toward the back room to gather her things. Caitlin sat in stunned disbelief. She had spent her life surrounded by cameras and fans, but in this small diner, she had witnessed a rare act of courage. The quiet dignity of a woman who chose kindness over convenience, even when it cost her everything. As Sarah disappeared into the back, Caitlin rose and approached the counter. Frank was already wiping it down, muttering under his breath, pretending nothing had happened. "Excuse me," Caitlin said evenly. "We're closed." He grunted without looking up. "I know who you are, Frank Morrison," she said, her tone cool and measured. He paused, eyes flicking up in irritation. "You've owned this diner for 12 years. Your wife left you 3 years ago. Your son hasn't spoken to you in 2. And you've just fired the best employee you ever had because she cared about someone." His hand stopped mid-wipe. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Caitlin met his glare with quiet intensity. "Someone who still believes that kindness matters. Someone who's about to make sure the world knows exactly what happened here tonight." Frank's face blanched. He didn't yet realize that the young woman standing before him wasn't just any stranger. She was one of the most recognized athletes in America, and within hours, the story of Murphy's Diner and the waitress who lost everything for compassion would spread across social media, uniting strangers around the world in outrage and empathy. By morning, the small diner would be flooded with journalists. Donations would pour in for Sarah and Miguel, and Frank Morrison would be forced to confront the humanity he'd long forgotten. And though Sarah would wake up unemployed, uncertain, and terrified, she would also wake up to something far greater. Proof that kindness, even when it costs us everything, has the power to transform lives, not through...
I think the next play mentality is huge. Don't let the last play affect the next play, whether it be a turnover, missed shot, made shot, assist. Just be present in that possession.
Caitlin pulled back her hood, and even under the harsh fluorescent glare, Frank Morrison's expression shifted from irritation to disbelief as recognition dawned. His face drained of color as he realized he was staring at Caitlin Clark, one of the most famous athletes in America. Standing before him, fierce and unyielding. "I'm someone who just watched you destroy a good woman for being kind," Caitlin said softly, her voice low but filled with quiet conviction that carried more weight than any shout could. "And I'm someone who's about to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you really are." Frank's mouth opened and closed uselessly, his arrogance evaporating into fear. "Look, I didn't know. I mean, if I'd realized..." "Realized what?" Caitlin interrupted, her tone sharp as glass. "That treating people with decency matters? That Sarah Martinez is worth 100 of you." Her eyes blazed as she went on. "You didn't fire her for being bad at her job, Frank. You fired her because she reminded you of everything you've lost by being cruel." From the back room, Sarah emerged clutching a small box of her belongings. Her eyes were red, but her chin lifted with quiet dignity. She had heard every word, and something inside her, the part that had been crushed by shame, began to mend. "Sarah," Caitlin said, turning to her with warmth, "I want you to know that tonight isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of something better." And though Sarah could not yet imagine how, those words would soon prove truer than either of them could have dreamed. The following morning, Sarah woke to the sound of her phone buzzing endlessly. Messages, calls, and notifications poured in from every direction. Miguel, already awake, sat on the edge of the bed holding his phone, eyes wide. "Sarah," he said slowly, "why is Caitlin Clark talking about you on Instagram?" Sarah's pulse quickened as she grabbed her phone and opened the app. There, on her feed, was a video Caitlin had posted at dawn. Filmed in her car, her face raw and honest. "Last night, I met a woman named Sarah Martinez," Caitlin began. I was having the worst night of my life, completely lost, when I walked into Murphy's diner.